tarts today, sweet and savory. So Ben's got me all set up here. I'm going to start with the pot brisée. And what did brisée mean again? Broken dough. And so what's our mixing method for that? Biscuit. So what kind of butter do I use? Let's use cold butter. I got it in the fridge. Now you could use a food processor as long as you keep it under control. Better sift that flour. What kind of flour are we going to use? Pastry flour. Kind of lumpy. We better sifting it just to get the lumps out. And let's cut the butter in, cut in the cold butter. So if you use a food processor, you chop it up into a little bit smaller pieces, pulse. Just pulse it until you get some pieces in there. You still need the pieces of fat. Don't let it whirl around until it becomes a paste. Try to use the fine side on the grater. And how much liquid do you have there by baker's percent? 35. Change that to 40 if you would, please. The flour is getting a little bit dry today. So again, take your container, put it on the scale, and add 1 egg. How many ounces if we use 10 ounces of flour, how many ounces of combined liquids do we need at 40%? 4 ounces. Remember, 1 egg is not quite 2 ounces. So put this on the scale, crack 1 egg into it, and fill the rest up with nice cold water. All right. Don't forget to whisk those two together. And all we want to do is hydrate. So this, we made cookies out of it, right? Sweet item. They were sweet and savory. This dough is so basic. We better have this on the back, don't you think? Turn over to the last page in your packet, if you would be so kind. And can you find the pot brisée there for me? It's with a galette. A galette is basically a pie without a pan. So we better make that one today. We have the pie filling technology, right? So we can do it. We got the dough. So one thing today is we'll practice a galette. And how much flour do you have for that recipe? 5 ounces. How many cups of flour would that be? I think we could do that. I mean, that's not too expensive to buy a little baggie of flour, okay? And practice that at home. So that's your black box. You can practice it here. You can practice it at home, either one. Cook it for your boss. Might get it on the menu. You never know. This is fresh fruit time of year. So looking for various ways to serve that. You have a raspberry galette, strawberry galette, blueberry galette. And what did brisée mean again? Broken. So that's what your dough should look like. If it starts getting too warm, better get that in the refrigerator. So keep everything nice and cold. All hydrated. See, I don't have any white flour on there. Everything's hydrated. Just so it holds together. Now that's as much as you're going to have for the black box right there. So we'll save that. And with this one, we'll make a tart shell. So what's the difference between a pie and a tart? The what? They're both round. Mostly it's the height. Yeah, it's the height. Usually a tart has a more rich filling. So we're going to make a ganache tart today. A piece of pie that high of ganache, it's pretty thick. So if you want a richer filling, then you're going to go to a tart shell. It's just a lower profile. There's not exactly any law. You can buy a deep dish tart pan or a shallow pie pan, either ones. But that's the idea. You have a rich filling, go a little bit lower profile. These just happen to have a removable bottom, so it might be easier to get the thing out, but it doesn't have to have. Pretty convenient that way. Now sometimes though we do forget the removable bottom and we take off and head for the oven and oops. So as you haul this around, I suggest you keep it on a sheet pan because your fingers get in there and pop the bottom up. So the bottom does have some disadvantages when you forget it's there. All right? So we rolled out our pie crust. This should be pretty easy for us to do since we practiced that. Get it nice and round, rock around the clock. Remember, keep it moving, keep it moving. And again, it needs just to be just a little bit bigger than the pan. Now these are about the hardest doughs to pick up. So it's kind of hard to pick it up and just place it in there. So we can use the rolling pin trick for that. So get your rolling pin. Make sure you have a rolling pin that's just a little bit longer than the dough so you can hold the edges. And then our pans are nice and heavy. They're not those little aluminum pie pans. So you can get that on there. Over you go. Don't touch the pan with the rolling pin or you get a hole in it. And just like our pie then, the sides are draped, not down in the square corner. So we'll have to fix that. So just like our pie, pick the side up and press it down into the square corner. Now with our nice sharp metal sides, there is a disadvantage. You might cut a hole in it when you're putting it in there. But once you get it in there, we have a nice advantage. Take your rolling pin, cut the top off. Okay? Now we're going to pre-bake these, and we'll do the bean thing again. We'll do the bean trick. So line it with the beans. When the top bakes just a little bit, take the beans out, continue baking until it's nice and crispy brown. The brisée is going to bake differently than the sucré. So if you put them both on the same sheet pan, one will take longer than the other probably. But make sure it's done nice and brown so it'll be nice and crispy. I'll turn that one over to Ben. Ooh, I have some extra dough. Let's see, what could I do with that? Well, I could practice for my black box. So I'm going to make a galette out of that. We'll make a one-serving galette. It could be the size of a 9-inch or 10-inch, whatever you want. It could be square. We're going to make them round and a one-serving. So take off a piece of dough. Now you're going to get this much for the black box because you might make a mistake. You might burn this one up. Well, you got a little backup there. So don't serve that much to the chef. It's a one-serving item. So let's roll that out nice and thin. Galette, pie without a pan. What kind of filling you got there on your black box? Some fruit filling. Well, you never know what kind of fruit you have. So I'm going to use some apples. And what type of could I have the cinnamon sugar bin? Is that here somewhere? What type of pie filling is that? What kind of fruit filling? A pre-cooked or an old-fashioned? Old-fashioned type. So we need some sugar. You got a recipe there, right? How much sugar do I need? 3 teaspoons? 2. Okay, that'll be about right. We'll eyeball this one, chefs, just for you. Then we need some flour, right? So a teaspoon? Something like that. I've already got the spices in here. A little lemon juice would be good. Now this is going to have an open top to it, so we want to have the fruit nice and purty like. So practice your little slicing skills. Random chop, is that a classic cut? Random chop. I haven't heard, I see it used a lot, but it's not classic cut, right? Now, if you do some dried fruit like we did the other day, it's kind of difficult because that dried fruit, when it's on the open side here, it just dries up and totally dehydrates. So careful with the dried fruit. You'd want to hide it underneath if that's your preference. We might want to finish that with a little butter. Then we'll make a little, some little sides for it. So if you draw the shell up and just pleat it in a few spots. That should hold that filling in there. I'm going to tip mine over a little bit. So it can have a rustic look to it, a refined look to it. Bad hair day. But I want you to be sure to finish it with water and sugar. So that will add a little sweetness to it and have it caramelize a little bit better. So if you don't have water and sugar on yours, I'm going to say something. Okay, Gillette, pie without a pan. That's one of your assignments today. All right. Well, I still have some dough left here. And we said this was also for a savory item. Let's see, I could do that. I'll make a little meat pie. Yeah, let's try that. Meat pasty. So we'll try that little regional cuisine, very much a Wisconsin, northern Michigan type of a thing. It's a pâte brisée. A flaky pastry. Now, wherever you go, if they have a little pastry, it has to be flour, water, probably some fat, right? Maybe an egg. So no matter where you go in the world, it's there somewhere with something stuffed in it. So it can't be too complicated. Let's see. So this was a meat and potatoes, maybe a rutabaga, root vegetable, carrot, onion, spiced up sort of a thing. Right? Yep. We've got that. In fact, our comrade friend Ben made you a whole bowl. We got a little jump start on that this morning. So put a glove on here for this. But you can have a steak pasty, chicken pasty. This is pork, ground pork, spiced pork. You can roll up roll a whole chicken breast in there if you wanted. Make a nice chicken roulade, fill the chicken breast, bake it in there, it'll be nice. Here's a little miniature version here for the fewer calorie people. This can be strictly vegetables. That could be nice mushrooms and potatoes and all that in there. So a good vegetarian item as well. So that's for you if you'd like that. We'll glue them together with a little bit of egg wash. And this one I had in the refrigerator. The dough's a little stiff. There it goes. So people have different styles. The original ones, as I mentioned yesterday, they're go back to the mining days. So the crust was a lot bigger, and it was usually laid on the side. So that was the handle that, if your hands are all dirty, you could grab onto that dough and eat out the filling there. But you don't need that big ring of dough. We do have civilized knives and forks to eat with. Now, why would we want to egg wash that a little bit? Color, caramelization, nice and shiny, shiny, shiny. So we'll bake these. Now everything went in raw. Potatoes, carrots, that was all raw. And how are we going to tell when it's done? Chefs? A thermometer. And what would the thermometer say when it's all done? Better do 165, okay? Stay on the safe side with that meat. And everything should be done at that temperature. Let's put these in the Baxter oven at least 350, okay? Thank you, Ben. So you've got your assignment then for that, for your pâte brisée. You're going to make a tart shell. You're going to make a galette. Okay, how about some pâte sucrée then? Let's try that one next. Ben's got me all set up here. What's the difference between the sucré and the brisée? The biggest difference is well, there's less liquid is one difference, and the other biggest difference is the sugar. So now we have a pâte sucrée, a sugar dough, a sweet dough. So what mixing method could we use for this? Creaming or biscuit. If you use the creaming method, what ingredient would be mixed in with the fat? The sugar. So separate the sugar and the fat. You'd use warm fat. The one problem is when you get the dough done, it's going to be very soft. You'd have to refrigerate it, which, if you don't mind that step, that's fine. I'm going to use, again, the biscuit fraisé method. And then the dough will be nice and cold so I can use it right away. So my butter's in the fridge. Cheese grater again. So don't forget, grate, grate, toss, toss. Weigh your butter first. All goes through the grater. So for small batches, this is kind of the best. For bigger batches, this would be sort of awkward. So you'd use the creaming method on a mixer. Commonly, this dough is made, put in big batches, put in a sheet pan, and then as you need it on a daily basis, it's brought out and rolled out. And do you have vanilla on your recipe? Let's put that in there, okay? Be sure to put a capful of vanilla in. And let's whisk those two together. Thanks, Ben. So toss the hydrate. Now I am pinching this one a little bit, get that butter going. So far we have just the biscuit. There's no white flour in there though, okay? Everything's nice and yellow, hydrated. And then the fraise. The smearing on the table, you can see all the butters in streaks there. Roll it up, give it a spin. And one more time, should be good. So nice and smooth. Again, the dough is still a little bit cool to the touch, so we're good to go. We're going to make a tart shell with half of that, so be sure to cut it in half. Could you mark that down, please? Cut in half. We tend to forget that one. We just want enough dough for the tart. If you roll out a big sheet of dough, you got a lot of scrap, and as soon as you make scrap, you have a lot different pastry when you're done. So we're going to make a tart shell out of that. And this is probably the hardest dough to work with in this respect. It has very little gluten, so if I pick it up and pull it, breaks a hole in it. That's why we're saving it till the end of class. It's the most difficult one to roll out, so hopefully we got a few rolling pin skills now. A little bit bigger than the pan. There we go. Why do I keep doing that? Keep the bottom, keep the oven clean. That's the thinking ahead. Okay? I think this is on the black box too. Let's check that page and let's see what we're going to make with the pâte sucrée. Thank you, Ben. A what? A fruit tartlet or a ganache tartlet, either one. But the tartlet, that means we have a small piece of small pastry. So let's try that. You can buy little tartlet pans too with the bottoms that come out. but the bottoms always get lost. They're so small. So I think it's just as easy to use those little guys right there. Take the biggest cutter out of the box. And again, we'll bean these. As you can see, it wouldn't take very long to make a lot of these. You could do for these, to bean these, you could do the bean and the other pan trick. Just like we did yesterday. Okay? So tartlet, let's see, I'll leave that one out there. Thanks, Ben. Now these doughs look a lot alike, right? So you have two doughs going on. Now the worst thing we can do, especially on a day like today, is just stand there holding your hands. Everything gets really warm. So how would I tell the difference in the two doughs? Taste it. This one's sweet and the other one's not. So if you do get mixed up, just try tasting it. We do have them baked off. So again, convenient to have the bottom pop out at the right time. At the wrong time, it's not so convenient. So be sure to take them out of the pans before you fill them, because if we fill it, we can't do this. And sometimes they're a little bit hard to get off of there, but the brisée is really easy to get off. You just slide that off of there. We got some 9-inch cake circles here. Be sure it's nice and brown and baked at the bottom, nice and crispy. If that has a real greasy, raw look to it, put it back in the oven. The sucre, a little harder to get off sometimes because the dough, as you see on this one, it's sort of snuck down under this, the tart shell bottom. So you have to take a knife or some kind of a scraper and scrape that off. You have to scrape this way. If you scrape that way, it breaks the side off. See, if this were full of ganache or my fresh fruit filling, I'd have a big problem, okay? And then you should be able to get a knife or a scraper under there, pop that off pretty easy. So, Ben, what are we going to do first? The ganache tart? Fabulous. The what? All right. So on your black box, also on today, take a look at your tart page, and let's see what kind of fillings we have for a sweet tart. You're going to make a sweet tart today and a savory tart. So be sure to put the sweet tart in the sweet shell and the savory tart in the not sweet shell, all right? And so the first one we're going to make is a ganache tart. Ganache, highly complicated. So complicated, there's two ingredients: chocolate and cream. So basic ganache recipe, equal parts of both. So 8 ounces of chocolate, 8 ounces of cream. Now we're going to put some garnish in ours, so it's going to fill up the pan a little bit more. If you don't put any garnish in, well, then you're going to have to maybe you do 12 and 12. Also, you're going to make a tartlet. So I'll need some filling for that one too. So I might need a 12 and a 12. The basic recipe there is 8 and 8, but it depends what you're going to put in there for garnish. So, chef, it's up to you. So you don't want just a little teeny puddle in the bottom. You want it to be full up to the top. So Ben's got so much garnish here that we're going to go with 8 ounces of chocolate, 8 ounces of cream. Now be sure you get the right chocolate. We got to get the melting stuff, right? So in there, I think it's over there by Lindsay, should be a bucket of dark chocolate. All it is chocolate and cream. So Ben went over and brought the cream to a simmer. And you pour the hot cream over the unmelted chocolate. Let that rest for just a little bit. And as we stir that together, we don't want to get a bunch of air in there. So when we pour it into our mold, we don't want all these bubbles. So be sure to use a spatula. Gently stir. Very simple. Some do a little bit more chocolate, a little bit more cream. If you want it a little bit softer, then you'd have more cream. A little bit stiffer, more chocolate. Or if you had another garnish, let's say you wanted to put in some other flavor like a liqueur, well, then you might want to put in less cream if it turns out too soft. Maybe a nice kind of a jam, orange marmalade, something like that to give it some flavor. You may want to increase the chocolate a little bit. Well, two basic ingredients in ganache, chocolate and cream, but there's one more that's pretty standard, and that's some type of liqueur. Two reasons: flavor, and second reason is a preservative. I mean, we have cream in here, right? It's made to be served at room temperature, so it does help to have a little bit of preservative in there. So let's see, Ben, what do you have here? You got cherries and hazelnuts, a good Oregon combination. Let's see if we have any liqueur to match the cherries. Ah, how'd you do that? It's your lucky day. So we have some cherry brandy. We'll put that in there. And you can put in about 10%. So I've got 16 ounces here. So how many ounces of liqueur could I put in? 1.5. Okay, I might not do quite that much. Now for a garnish, we've got some dried fruit and some hazelnuts, of course. If you put the nuts in there, you should toast them because it's not going to go back in the oven. Nuts out of the bins, almost always stale, right? And of course, this would, we didn't bake this one this morning, but pre-bake this shell also, so you have 2 tarts. You can either mix this in with the ganache, or just put in the bottom. Now you can do fruit with this. The fresh raspberries work really nice. Blueberries and chocolate works really nice. So you can put the fresh fruit in there. That's not a problem. But as soon as you slice a fruit, like slice a strawberry, that slice leaches out juice. As this sets longer and longer, it just makes a puddle right around the strawberry. The last So that needs to go in nice and warm. So make sure your tart shell is done before you make the ganache. Because it goes in nice and hot. And then it's not, you don't have to spread it. It just fills it all by itself. And then we'll pop any little bubbles that happen to come up in there. And this cools at room temperature is the best. If you put it in the refrigerator and it gets cold, in this kind of weather, you take it out, cold, and you get condensation all over it, and it doesn't look very good. So room temperature, it does take a while, like a couple of hours, especially on a day like today. But cooled at room temperature, served at room temperature, stored at room temperature, just so it doesn't dry out. Okay? So I'll put that over here, and we'll get into that one later. And let's see, well, let's try a savory tart. Check out down in the bottom there. And we're going to start with our cream cheese tart. So we're going to make some cream cheese tart. But you know what? I forgot to take the cream cheese out of the refrigerator. And it's still cold. So we're going to make a cheesecake. But with no sugar in it. So a savory cheesecake, but forgot to take out the cream cheese. The health department doesn't like to have your cream cheese sitting out at room temperature overnight anyhow. So here's a way that we could do that with, well, if we forgot, or if we don't like leaving our cream cheese sit around in hot weather. So we'll take some hot water bath. Right out of the sink is fine. And we'll let that, that'll work on that cream cheese, get it nice and soft for us. And so with a cream cheese tart, we got some cream cheese. Well, we want to set that up a little bit softer. So we're going to put some sour cream in there, mix some sour cream in there, and then that'll soften that up just a little bit, make it a little bit lighter. We'll put an egg in there, and that's what holds it together. So when it bakes, the egg sets, holds it together. Then we got some garnish. Ooh, Ben, my favorite kind. Blue cheese, pine nuts, and thyme. Very nice. Now this is very rich, isn't it? That's why it's a tart. So just a small slice with a salad appetizer. Very good. You could make this in a sheet pan if you need a lot of them. You could roll your dough out in a sheet. Oh, could you bring that shell over, that half sheet pan there, so we could check that out? We'll probably put a little salt and pepper in here, huh? So chef, I'm sure you could think of something to go in here. Sun-dried tomatoes, olives, all that kind of thing. And so here's our pie shell that I rolled out the half sheet on Monday. And so this could also be a savory tart. This could go in here, cut up into small pieces. Appetizer, making a lot of them. We'll do something else in that pretty soon. So if you get that broken up, increase the surface area a little bit. It won't take long. That'll be nice and soft. Well, another option, if you don't like cream cheese, you could do an onion tart. Of course, this is a nice onion time of year, so caramelized onion tart. Caramelized onions on the stove. You can put a little wine in there to deglaze things. Some people put some cream in there. I think it's kind of ugly myself. It makes kind of a light pale brown look to it, or if you use red onions, it gets not a very pretty purple in my opinion. So I don't like to put the cream in there. So you get your onions, season them up, and they just lay right on top of here, and it's done. It doesn't go back in the oven or anything. It's good to go. Some people do put it back in the oven. I don't think it's necessary. Everything's done. Maybe a little crumbled feta on the top, or some other kind of cheese that you like. It could go back in to melt the cheese, but nice onion tart, big or small item. Now, one of our favorites coming up here pretty soon, and we're not quite ready yet, is a tomato tart. Tomato tart, you take some roasted garlic, spread that on the bottom, put some melting cheese in there, fontina, mozzarella, pepper jack, whatever you'd like. Then your nice heirloom tomatoes, slice those, put those on the top. Don't forget the basil, don't forget the salt and pepper. Maybe a little bit of cheese back on the top, goes back in the oven just to melt the cheese. Tomato tart. So now you increase the surface area again with your cream cheese. There's no sense adding this before that's soft, although it just gets all chunky. It looks like cottage cheese tart, which you don't want that look, okay? So a little bit of patience. We can be doing other things, gathering all this. On your ganache, again, anything you can infuse into that cream, that's a nice flavor too. So you put some orange zest in there, let that steep in the cream for a while. That's nice. But a lot of liqueurs to pick from as far as your flavor is concerned. Now we're starting to make some progress. Okay, now we're making progress. But no sense going on until that's nice and warm and soft, okay? We'll put some salt and pepper in there also. Sun-dried tomatoes go nice in there. Even caramelized onions in here. So you caramelize your onions, stir them into this mixture. That's nice. So a lot of different kinds of garnish can go with that cream cheese tart. So you're going to make a savory tart today. You have two options, onion tart or the cream cheese tart. Almost there. Almost there. I suppose we could hit our salt and pepper in there, huh, Ben? Pepper. Result. Thank you. All right, we're good. Sour cream goes next. Egg goes next. Nice and smooth. Garnish, get some thyme, get some pine nuts, get some blue cheese. Now you need to spread that in there real nice, okay? So everybody's got an offset spatula of some sort. How long is this going to take to bake? Not very long. High temperature or low temperature? Low temperature, why? I'm sorry? Shell's already baked, right. So we don't need a high temperature for the shell. And at what temperature do the eggs 165, it's just got to come to 165. Just like our quiche yesterday, it doesn't need to overbake. So again, you can just set your finger on there. You'll feel the middle when it's set. It's good to go. It could bake even on the cardboard, as far as it's concerned, or just on a sheet pan with a paper. Okay? So, you're going to mix two doughs today, pâte sucrée, pâte brisée. With the brisée, what are we going to do? We're going to make a savory tart with that. So you see it right up there, brisée, savory tart. And then a galette with the brisée. So savory tart with the brisée, galette with the brisée. These two things right here. All right? And then with the pâte sucrée, we're going to make another tart shell. You can either make a ganache tart, or we're going to finish our fresh fruit tart a little bit later. So we'll be demoing that as we go along. And that'll be pastry cream and fresh fruit on the top. And then also with the sucré, you're going to make one tartlet. And that's the little pan like this. So with your... So you have a tart and tartlet pâte sucrée. Okay? Ganache or fresh fruit, either one. Questions on that? So we're going to finish our fruit tart here, and then we'll look at our savory tart. It's out of the oven. So with your fruit tart, I took some apricot jam right out of the bucket over there, and brushed it lightly with a brush, and then put that back in the oven for about 4 minutes. And then so then the jam doesn't stick to your fingers. And so if you're going to leave the pastry cream in there for a long time, the crust would get real soggy. So that's one way to keep that from happening. So like if you're going to put this in the case to sell the whole thing, or if you're going to make it at noon to serve at supper time. Some people put a little tempered chocolate in there, any of those ways. If you're going to eat it right away, it's no big deal. So you don't need that. So just that's a barrier to keep the crust from getting soggy. And then we'll put some pastry cream in there, same as some of my pastry cream from Tuesday. But you need to really whip it up. And that's one reason we couldn't store it in the pastry bag, because it does kind of set again. So whip it up with a whisk. Make it nice and pretty. Make sure you get the right filling in the right shell. So sucré, sweet tart. So again, this is optional. You can make a fresh fruit tart if you have pastry cream, or the ganache tart, either one. But at this time of year especially, we have all this fresh fruit, especially in Oregon, Willamette Valley. We got all kinds of stuff, but we're going to do a combo here. So I have some mango and some papaya. Some mango. Now, of course, you don't want the peel on here, but sometimes when you peel it, the pieces don't look nice and round. One way to fix that is to just slice it, and then take a cookie cutter, and all the pieces will be nice and round. Now this one went south here a little bit. So we have different colors. That fruit can all be, it can be put on for color, flavor. And add some more color to that. Let's see, we got some blueberries, fresh blueberries. Some fresh blackberries. Now when you put some height on there, okay, that's kind of nice, but when you go to cut it, well, for a plate of dessert, it's going to look kind of messy, right? So again, the tartlet sort of comes to our rescue. We can pile that as high as we'd like. Blackberries, blueberries, raspberries. And then that'll serve a lot easier. We probably should shine that up a little bit with some apricot glaze. Now there's 2 buckets of apricot down there. One is apricot jam, but you could thin that down with water and then brush it over the top like we're going to do, but they do make also a glaze that they take most of the chunks out, so very clear. You buy that. Sort of like the bakery aspic, let's say. Makes everything nice and shiny, preserves it, holds it all together. Apricot glaze. And then this, of course, servable on your plate with your ice cream or whatever. This might be better for a buffet look to it. But when you cut these up, it's just kind of a mess. So that's why we're working on the tartlets as well as the more presentation piece, the bigger tart. Okay, so we've got that. If you're going to do a fresh fruit tart, I want you to put the glaze on top. And then, here is our pot brise items. We've got our savory tart, our galettes. Now, Ben made this one, and underneath there he put some almond cream. He put his apples on top of that. You can put pastry cream under there. You can see how nice and full and creamy that's going to be. Mine was just the apples, a little apple pie. Put your ice cream on there. And this, I had made this the other day on Monday. I rolled out the pie dough, put it in here, and that's got almond cream on the bottom, blackberries, and then the streusel on top. So that's a bigger version of this, basically the same kind of an idea, But then we could cut this up into small pieces. You have servings for 25 to 40 people there pretty easily. So here's our savory tart. As you can see, all it has to do is just bake and set. And when you cut that, I mean, this is so rich, this is 16 people right here. So as you cut that, you have to be sure to cut toward the center. If you cut away from it, the edge breaks off. And so that doesn't look very nice for your nice salad. So that'll have a nice rich look to it, rich taste to it, appetizer, salad, anything like that. Buffet, you can have these all lined up, nice and pretty like on your mirror. Okay? So, fresh fruit tart, we'll finish that, and there you go.